Yeah, so today we're going to be making this utility belt that I have sitting on my Batman upper armor. And I feel like it turned out pretty good, but I do go on a rant for like the next 3 minutes as to why I made this. So if you just want to get straight into the build, you may want to skip a couple minutes ahead. Alright, so here I have this big tote, and what is inside this big tote is my Batman costume. And since all the Comic-Cons near me are banning prop weapons, I've had to remove some things like this grapple gun and holster that I made for it. This isn't based off of anything, just kind of like my own thing. And that was one thing I had to take off of my utility belt. I can no longer bring this with me. I can't use it. And I also have a batarang with its own holster based off of the Dawn of Justice batarangs, and also cannot take this into the comic convention anymore. So that came off the belt, and this came off the belt, which is unfortunate because I did spend a decent amount of time combined on the both of these just to basically sit on the back of my belt. You can't even really see it, but it was there. And this utility belt initially was, I believe, a purchase from 4 years ago. This is a keychain. This is EVA foam. The belt itself is a policeman's belt. I'm not sure if it's a duty belt or what exactly it is, but it's thick, heavy canvas and has velcro on it. And the actual straps of the belt can be pulled through and velcroed, so you can change the length of the belt, and then it just connects with this clip system, and that's that. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this utility belt. It's fine. But one of the things is it's super heavy, and I really just wanted something that was entirely for show. I made these pouches functional. Like, they open and they close. So does this. I actually did a tutorial video on this. And the belt I'm going to be making today isn't going to close. And I'm going to make everything myself. None of the pouches are going to be functional. They're just going to be fake. I actually carry a pouch here that I can always hook onto the back of the belt that holds my cell phone and wallet and keys and things like that. And the cape covers it. Nobody sees it. Kind of like the grapple gun and batarang that I made. You really can't see it, but I can put that onto anything. But one of the problems I came into was these slide around a lot and actually move a lot. And there's ways to slow them down from sliding. Mostly involves putting some Velcro on the back, which I did, and then it kind of sticks in place. But I don't actually put anything in these pouches. It was cool that I made them functional, but they're kind of useless. And these tubes are not functional. And what I want to do for the Batman belt that I'm going to make today is everything from the tubes to the pouches, none of them are going to be functional, and none of them are going to move. They're all going to be static and set in place. And I'm hoping the end result is going to be considerably lighter than this, because this belt weighs at least 3-4 pounds. And I guess that's not a lot, but when you throw on the thigh pads and the gloves and the spats, these are from a previous build video that I did. And for example, the gauntlets, also from a previous video, that doesn't throw in like the chest armor and your cowl and neck piece if you have one separate from your cowl, and your actual cape. And everything that actually goes into this, it's like a sauna suit. You're just pouring sweat. So anyway, that I've been rebuilding some of this stuff is to make it not only more functional in terms of walking, jumping, moving around, striking a superhero pose, anything like that, but also to make it lighter and more comfortable and more breathable. And the belt is yet another step in that direction as I update and continue my costume. Now that I'm done with that opening 3 minutes of rambling, what I'm actually going to use to make this is a nylon strap. It's about 2 inches wide, maybe 1 3/4 inches. And I got this at Hobby Lobby. It wasn't super cheap, but I think it was $5 for a yard of it. I got 2 just so I'd have some extra for other projects, because I think this stuff's pretty cool. And it is not stretch. It does not stretch at all. There's a slightest bit of give in it, but for the most part, it's real durable. But it weighs nothing. It's super light, so that's great. And also to make this, I'm going to be using Shock EVA foam. I know, that's such a shock if you watch my channel. I make everything out of this. I'm going to be using 5mm, 2mm, and 3mm. I'm also going to be using some of this type of floor matting foam that is much thicker. I want to say it's around probably 9-10 millimeters thick, but you can always just double these up And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing out my patterns for the center buckle and some of the side pouches. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to work on here is going to be the buckle. And I just took out and drew how I wanted the buckle to look on a piece of paper, and then I traced that out onto some foam. And what I ended up with was these pieces. And I am going to take a picture of this just so that I can upload it to the Facebook page. So if you guys want, you got the inches here for reference. You can download the picture and print it out for yourselves and make your own. And I did 2 of these in 5mm EVA foam, but I'm actually not going to use these because I have one thicker piece that will cover for the 2. And so that'll be my base. And then I'm going to put my 2 pieces here for both sides. And this centerpiece. So when you look at the picture that I upload to Facebook, all the pieces are in 5mm. Like I say, you can substitute these 2 for one thicker piece. But this piece in red here, you'll notice in the photo, is a different color than these browns. And that's because this is only 3mm thick. The other ones are 5. And I'm going to glue all these together with some contact cement. Alright, and here is the finished buckle all together. And you'll notice the surface of this is kind of shiny. I already took a heat gun and just put some heat on it to seal it. And if you ever have problems, your foam is not flat, maybe there's a curve to it, use a heat gun and just heat it a little bit and lay it flat, and it should straighten out pretty easily if you haven't done this before. If you've done this before, you already know that. There's been times that I've, like for example, my heat gun broke. I did use a hairdryer to seal foam from time to time, but it doesn't seem to get that nice even consistency like a heat gun, and it takes forever. You may overheat the hairdryer, so if you have, the $15 or $20, go out and get yourself a heat gun. And I took my length fabric, and I used a paint marker to mark the center. Doesn't matter because I'm going to cover it. That way I know where the buckle goes. And I'm going to go ahead and attach everything at the end because I'm going to need to paint it. Alright, next, now that I have the buckle finished, I'm going to start working outward on each side. And I cut a couple of square pieces out of 5mm EVA foam. And these ones on top are 2mm. And I simply cut them in half and then cut that piece in half and discarded a section and made 2 like that. And these, once everything is said and done, will be glued like this on either side of the center buckle. And initially I considered not even having the strap and just using one straight continuous piece of 5mm foam with a 2mm just like this, but one continuous piece, and just gluing the buckle and all the pouches and tubes and stuff onto it. But for sake of flexibility and saving weight, I'm just going to intermittently have these where I need in between pouches, etc. Alright, next part, working out on either side, is going to be a pouch here, and a tube in between with another pouch on either end, which is 4 pouches total. And to make those, I have 8 of these oval shapes that are going to be the sides, and I have 4 of these that are going to wrap around them to make the actual pouch. And I'm going to glue all this together again with contact cement, and I'm going to go ahead and show you here real quick just what I'm going to do. Alright, so first I'm going to start by taking these oval pieces, and I'm going to get some contact cement here. I'm going to work it all the way around this edge right here. And always be sure anytime you use contact cement, spray paint, anything like that, that you use a respirator and that you do it outside in a well-ventilated area. If you do decide or have to do it inside an apartment or a house, you don't have a porch maybe, or you're just kind of confined in a smaller city space, for example, you may want to open all the windows. In fact, you should open all the windows and, of course, wear a respirator. Okay, so there I have it around the edges. Next, I'm going to take my piece here, and along these inside edges, I'm also going to apply the contact cement. just like that. I'm going to let that dry and then glue all this together. Okay, so I've taken my pieces that I contact cemented and I glued them on so that they're pretty well lined up. And you can see they're hanging off the edge here. What I'm going to do next is continue, since I contact cemented all the way around this and all the way up the edge, continue to very carefully and as straight as possible, because with contact cement, it's one and done. Once you stick these pieces together, you can't unstick them or reposition them. They just are where they are at that point. Okay, so there you can see, I've already got the side of the pouch. And now, continue to fold this over the rest of the way, like that. And at the end, I'm going to glue this piece to here, so you have a nice solid contact surface. Now, if you wanted to, you know, at this point, you could take it and you could put some Velcro right on the inside of here, and you could have a functional pouch. But once again, like, this is just so tiny. Whenever you have gloves on, you really can't get your fingers in there to get anything. So I don't know how Batman's supposed to use this if it wasn't a comic book and was real, but not very functional. Alright, I have a total of 4 now. I put them all together, and you can see this shiny area here. I did apply some contact cement to it. And now all I have to do is line this up and press it down nice and even. And I have my finished rough body of my utility belt pouch, which is going to sit there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close these other ones, and then we're going to move on to the tubes. Alrighty, so I have these pouches finished. And the next thing is the little capsule tube type belt attachment. And for this, I was given... People that know me always save all this weird stuff and give me all these things, but I think this had like mints or some sort of lozenges or something in it, but I put some 2mm EVA foam here on the top and just glued some 2mm EVA foam stripper on the side here, and I will then attach it like this. And this saved me a lot of time. Initially I just thought about taking an old Sharpie or something and wrapping some EVA foam around it and making it, but this saved a lot of time. And it also looks pretty good and has a nice size and fits in pretty well with everything else. So if you can scavenge something like this, definitely take advantage of it, because it'll save you a lot of time and money. Now that I have all of my pieces here done, what I'm going to do is any sort of final sanding. And if the pieces don't look bad, like this one's all pretty flush and pretty good, not really going to do anything to that one per se, but this one here has a little bit of an edge on it, so I'm going to go ahead and take that down. And to do that, I'm going to use a Dremel. Now, this isn't 100% necessary in the sense that I'm shaving off about a ½ millimeter here to even this out. One might even call this obsessive, but I'm going to go through and do that on all these pieces to get them as flush and smooth and even as possible. And once that's done, we're going to move on to sealing this. And you don't necessarily have to do the sanding. And to do the sanding, you don't really necessarily have to have a Dremel rotary tool. You can do this by hand. It just does take a little bit longer. Okay, now that I've done all my sanding, including, for example, on this buckle here, I just sanded down and rounded out the edges. And that's just to help it make a little bit make it look a little bit less like foam, like something I cut out of foam in a cookie cutter shape, and give it more of, you know, an actual machined and rounded and worked shape. And next what I'm going to need to do is seal these pieces. And to seal these pieces, I am going to use a heat gun. And mine actually broke, so I had to put this project on hold for a second until I got paid and could pick up a new one, which I got locally at a store called Just Cosplay Supply. There are now several cosplay stores which have popped up across the US, but as far as I know, this was the first and original full cosplay store. Now, anybody that's done this stuff before and you have a heat gun, you already know all this, so just be patient with me here. But those who haven't, heat guns, kind of think of it like a hairdryer that gets 10 times hotter, and these are dangerous. So if you're a kid, you need to have an adult or a parent or guardian help you, and you know, this gets so hot that it can catch things on fire, including the foam. It can melt and catch the foam on fire, so you need to be careful. And this one is dual setting, so I have a low setting and a high setting. So if it's your first time, you may want to go slow and take a little bit longer and use the low setting instead of the high, because the high can just literally melt your project. You need to be careful too when you use it where you sit it down and what you do with it. Because if I would just sit this on here with the tip touching the paper, it's going to catch it on fire, and I'm going to burn my house down. So heat guns are pretty essential, and I don't show them a lot in my videos. I just say, look, I heated this with a heat gun and I smoothed it out or whatever. I don't show it a lot, and the reason I don't show it a lot is because it really is dangerous and I feel like a liability for it. So this is my PSA for using heat guns. Okay, next what I'm going to do is take these pieces, and you'll notice the outside of it is pretty porous, and to help seal up the foam so it's not so porous, okay, and you'll notice probably that the foam looks much shinier now. And what the heat gun is doing is it's causing the outside of the foam to shrink and contract. And whenever it does that, it helps to seal all this up, tighten it all up, so that whenever you paint it and seal it, it won't absorb as much of your paint and sealant. And also just looks much smoother and much nicer. And now that I've sealed the front, and it's pretty much cool, I'm going to heat the back. And the reason why I'm going to heat the back is I'm going to put a slight curve into this piece. And that's so it gives it more of a rounded belt shape. And the foam is hot like this, you can bend it and tweak it and put some curvature or any shape that you want in anything. And that's how I put brow, like eyebrow and cheekbone definitions and masks and things like that. And I'm going to work with this for a little bit and give it a slight curve. And also at the same time, I'm going to go through and use the heat guns to seal all these pieces up. This one here, you can see I've already sealed. It's nice and shiny and smooth, has good texture. And this one that's kind of flat and dull, I have not sealed. So you can definitely tell a difference where you even seal and paint and the quality of what this is going to look like at the end. So it's pretty important that you heat and form all your pieces using a heat gun. Alright, and now all my pieces are heated and have that nice consistent look to them. And next, I'm going to move on and start doing the sealing. But one more heat gun PSA. This tip is steel, and it is really hot. So you need to find somewhere to sit it while it cools. Make sure you don't touch it. It will burn you. I'm going to find somewhere to sit this while it cools, and for that, I'm just going to sit it on the concrete garage floor, away from anything that could be flammable or catch fire. And then try to remember not to step on said heat gun. But yeah, next I'm going to start sealing this, and to do that I'm just going to use some Mod Podge. And to seal these pieces, all I'm going to do is take a paintbrush and have a container of Mod Podge here, and I just simply brush it all over the piece. And the brush strokes I try to usually put in just one direction over the whole entire piece, and that is to ensure that it is nice and even. And even if you do get some streaks in it from the Mod Podge itself, it will all at least be in the same direction. If you see any of the brush strokes going through, that's going to help it look a little bit more like metal anyways, because you're going to have that grain to it. Which is part of the reason why I'm using this as opposed to something like Plastidip, for example. I just brush this all over the pieces and allow them to dry for about an hour, and then it's time to paint. Alright, now that all of my parts have been sealed, Next thing I'm going to do is airbrush this thing up with the help of the power of Mountain Dew and some opaque Createx black. And I mix this with some water and a little bit of Mod Podge just to help give that extra layer of seal. How much of that stuff you want to use, I don't have an exact ratio, but however much of that you want to use, you can kind of figure out just by trial and error. You do want it thin enough that it won't gunk up in your airbrush, that much is for sure. If it's too thick, it just will not apply correctly. You'll get bubbles and splotches and all kinds of stuff you don't want. And I'm going to be wearing a glove to protect my hand, eye protection for my eyes, and most importantly, a respirator. Okay, you can see the white around the edge. That was the color of this respirator. Okay, this one is rated for non-enamel painting and also for sanding. And I wear this whenever I paint stuff. And these are disposable. I go through about one every week or so. This one's pretty much at its end. But I wanted to show it to you so you guys could see just how much crap gets in this mask. You don't want that in your lungs. You really don't want that in your lungs. So always be careful and wear proper safety equipment. Alright, so now that all the pieces have been painted black and drying, next I'm going to put some gold over them. And just a quick thing to point out here, if you don't have an airbrush or any of this stuff, you can always just seal it with the Mod Podge, paint it with spray paint, or even paint it black with a brush. I just feel like the airbrush does such an excellent job of not gunking up spray paint. I feel like it gunks up a little bit, which is why I saved up my money and invested in the airbrush. And next what I'm going to put over this is some pure gold metallic paint, which is from Folk Art. This is not intended for an airbrush. This is acrylic craft paint. I thin these down with distilled water and also with some Windex, which helps it to pass through the airbrush. And it's about 50-50 between the water and the index and the paint. 50-50 water and Windex, probably about 40% water, 10% Windex, and 50% paint is a good place to start. If it's too thick or if the paint's old and there's clumps in it, it will clog up your airbrush and then you're going to have a pain cleaning it. And as far as this, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to film the painting of it, but I'm going to give you a quick description because I'm not going to paint this on solid gold. It's going to look weathered to an extent where there's going to be areas here like you would be touching that are going to be shinier and areas that are going to be darker where grit and things would cake up. And I'm going to go ahead and paint this and come back and show you how it looks. Alright, so for the first layer here, I just dust this with the gold. And you can notice here, you can see a lot of the black through it, and it gives it kind of a bronzed look. Just what I was going for, so that works out. I've done this before on multiple things. Paint it black first, and then do a thin coat of the metallic paint that you want, and you get this nice a bronzy color from the gold. Same thing with the silver, you get a deeper, richer silver that doesn't look so tacky. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through with the airbrush again and paint in some of those areas a little thicker and darker for wear. Right, here is the results of the final airbrushing job, and you'll notice that of course some of the areas I put the highlights is right around here, and when I left in the lowlights is of course in some of these other areas where you wouldn't have so much contact. Same thing with the buckle and all the other pieces here. And now the final thing to do is to let these dry and start putting them on the belt. However, first I must prep the belt by adding my Velcro. Now for the Velcro, I actually got this stuff here that is Velcro brand. You can even see it on the label here. And it is industrial strength Velcro. I picked this up at Just Cause Cosplay store. And you can find this online. I haven't seen it in any stores, although I did see something pretty similar at Lowe's. I'm not sure if it was Velcro brand though. And this stuff here is so tough. I mean, just peeling it apart is kind of a chore. However, on the back side of it, it does have adhesive. Despite that, I still used contact cement on the nylon strap before applying the Velcro. And I did 2 coats. The first layer of contact cement pretty much just soaked into the synthetic material. One thing I have noticed though with contact cement is things glue to synthetic materials I found a lot better and a lot easier than, say, trying to glue them to natural cloths like cotton. I have a real hard time getting things to stick using this particular brand of contact cement. Everybody tells me to use a different brand like Vargs and it'll work better, but I can't find that anywhere, so I use this. Now that I've got my industrial Velcro glued on both ends of this, respectively, I need to start gluing these on. And I just drew out here where I'm going to put the contact cement, which is going to be in here, and contact cement on the back of this. And once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and stick it on. But I'm also going to reinforce it with some tacks and super glue, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that next. Okay, so as far as the gluing, very similar to what I did with the Velcro here to get it on the actual nylon strap. I did use contact cement again, and I put a nice thick fat layer on the foam and about double on the actual strapping itself, and I glued on the centerpiece and the two side pieces that I curved, so they have a nice curved front here. And that's the initial tack, but just for extra sure this is going to stay, I took thumbtacks, okay, and I put Gorilla Glue on the tip of them. And then I inserted them in. This is to make sure, you see I did it at the different points of contact, basically at the corners here, here, and here. These bottom two are a little off and wonky, but also did it on the side piece. Now the side piece was thinner, so I actually took a couple tacks and I cut a 3mm piece of EVA foam and I stuck it on the tack so that it won't poke out the front of this, but I can still use the tack and I don't need my Dremel to like grind it down or do anything ridiculous, just to have some extra certainty that this is going to stick. Okay, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to repeat this process with these and the tubes. Now, since I want this to be a pretty flexible, comfortable belt and be able to curve and be lightweight, whenever I attach these pouches, I'm only going to put glue down the center here on a strip to glue them on before once again using the tacks to reinforce on the back. Alrighty, so the belt is now all together. And as I said earlier, I just glued this in the center and put about 3 tacks in each, including the tubes as well. And yeah, as far as all that goes, that is done. And now what I have here is some Treehouse Studio clear acrylic gloss coating. And, wow, I don't know why that was so hard to say. And I'm going to go ahead and spray a nice thin layer over this. Give it a little bit of extra protection. Especially on the plastic areas, on these caps. And that's mostly just because that is plastic and your fingernails and things like that are going to scratch off easier there. The foam, I don't so much worry about it coming off, but on these, I put a little bit extra. Now I'm just going to let this dry 24 hours and go ahead and try it on. Alright, so I was going to try this on, but then I realized, I'm not actually going to be wearing this. What this is going to be going over is my Batman upper body armor that I made, where my cape attaches and all that stuff, which I did make in a previous video. And yeah, here that is. I feel like this came out looking pretty good. It fits the costume nice. The other one, like I say, being it was an actual police duty belt, really sat far off the costume and was bulky and also heavy. And man, this one just looks so much better, at least in my opinion. So yeah, hopefully this guy's helped you out with your cosplay and you enjoyed this video. And as always, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.